everyone. Hi, welcome everyone. Laura Poland here, Dietitian in your kitchen, and I have Chloe.
Hello.
We're going to get started here in just a second. Just want to confirm things are going okay and everyone can see everything all right. If you have any questions, there should be a chat box there, and if not, feel free to email me, and we'll get started here in just a second to share our screen and get the PowerPoint going. Yeah. Alrighty. Okay. Well, let's get started here. Welcome on a Friday morning here. And today we're going to talk about redefining your relationship with food to get to a more nutritionally fit you. And so I am Laura Poland. I'm a registered dietitian, health coach, personal trainer, and I started my own business, Dietitian in Your Kitchen. And this is Chloe Pattison, and I will let her do a quick introduction of herself, and we will get started.
All right. So I recently graduated from Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina, and that's where I received my degree in dietetics and health promotion. I am now interning, doing my dietetic internship at The Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio, and that is a step I have to take, the last step, to become a registered dietitian. And today, this is my favorite topic to share with you all. I have a huge passion for inspiring conscious eating and, really instilling a mindful relationship in people when it comes to food. So my two biggest professional interests lie with weight management and behavior modification. So the behavioral modification is kind of where this talk falls into. Okay.
Sorry. Just real quick, hi there, everyone. Realizing that we're not seeing the, you're not seeing the screen yet, so let me get that for you, and we will get back to, there's Chloe, and
okay,
when you're ready for the next page.
Right, so this was my introduction page. Sorry about that. And again, this is my favorite topic to talk about. I'm really excited to share this with you. This is everything I'll be talking about today. I have discovered for myself, and I have watched the patients and clients I've worked with in the past. I've watched this become the main key to their success. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time later on talking about my role as the nutrition case manager for a clinic in rural North Carolina. And this, working with these particular patients, a lot of them were recovering drug addicts who had switched to food addiction in the past. Working with a lot of them has really shaped my outlook on the way I deliver nutrition education. And so here we go. In your thank you for registering email, we sent you a document, and this is what we're referring to as kind of a worksheet for you to work on throughout this talk. It's going to be the skeleton of what we send you at the end. That's the completed worksheet. So if you want to take notes while we talk, we did send you a PDF version that you can print off and fill in as you go, kind of the key points that we talk about. All right, so this talk is really about defining the one key to success that a lot of people lack when it comes to dieting and trying to get their wellness goals on track. And that key to success is developing a thought process. This infographic that I have shared with you is something I've compiled from all of the work I've done with patients and clients in the past. And it really shows that these are, when I ask people, what does food mean to you? These are the answers that they give me. And it really shows that there are a lot of rational and irrational ways of thinking about food, which is normal. And on your worksheet that we gave you, at the very top of the paper is a place for you to think for a moment and write down what food means to you. And the reason we're asking you to do this is because you have joined this session with us today for a reason. Something about it struck your interest, and you know that maybe there are some things you need to work on in your own wellness goals. And this is where it all starts, is with that thought process. So take a moment to think about it for you. If you want to share it with us through the group chat, that would be great. We love new perspectives on how people think about food. But really, everyone has a general understanding of mindfulness. And again, when we think about thought process and mindfulness, they go hand in hand. We're going to be breaking down, a relatively simple concept, a thought process. We're going to be breaking it down into more intricate parts with this topic. And the reason that this, concept is so important is because it really impacts the way that people behave around food. Eating food is just part of it. What leads you to eating that food? What causes you to overeat that food? What about when you're eating it or how you're eating it is being detrimental to the way you want to reach your wellness goals? And that's why we're going to be breaking it down in such an intricate way. And a lot of it may seem redundant, a lot of it may seem pretty elementary, but again, you'd be surprised the amount of common sense and self-control that goes out of the window when something as simple as food is introduced into someone's picture. And a lot of the behaviors we'll talk about are subconscious. They just happen and you don't realize that they're happening. And that's why we need to break things down to really invoke that thought process and make you step back and realize where the problem might lie. We're going to invite you to dig deep into your relationship with food, and we're going to be providing you with the tools to redefine that relationship. The where, when, why, what, and how of the way we eat food and the way we let food treat us is going to make up our talk today. I wanted to start with kind of a story about the one particular patient I had who really kickstarted this concept for me. Back when I was the nutrition case manager at this clinic, I told you I saw it all. I saw a lot of food dependence, a lot of food addiction, and just an overwhelming amount of poor food behavior. He was, like I had mentioned, he was a drug addict who had switched to food as his new addiction to kind of fill that void. And when we talk about addiction, that is the epitome of mindlessness, of losing self-control. You can think all day long that you want to kick a certain habit or you don't want to let something overpower you. And if you don't have the tools to develop that self-control, it's just going to happen regardless. And again, I said that has a lot to do with our subconscious behaviors. So this patient, he was very, very overweight, very obese. He came into my office one day and he was motivated, to the perfect extent that you would, someone like me would be excited to work with a patient who is motivated. And he sat down and he said, I want to lose weight. I want to really reach these goals. But he didn't even let me speak before he told me, this is how I want to do it. I don't want to cut this out. You can't tell me to switch this or do this. And, I know this hasn't worked for me in the past. Don't even waste your time doing this and this. And I'm sitting there saying, well, where do I even fit into your picture here? And I recognized after talking with him and talking about what he had done in the past that it was simply the thought process that was the missing part of the puzzle. So we worked, and over the span of almost 3 months, he had lost 33 pounds with simply working on developing his thought process. I didn't take anything away from him. I had to be very careful with how I approached the nutrition education I gave him. He was very resistant to a lot of the things that a typical nutrition educator would say. But over time, we worked with an exchange and an addition model to add new habits, new food behaviors that would kind of push out the old habits. And that's, again, what has created this concept for me. And I have seen it work. I've seen, this, when you change your relationship with food, you're able to interact with it in a completely different way. And it doesn't have to be all about deprivation. It doesn't have to be about restriction. It's really just about making what you're already doing, what you want to eat, more beneficial for you. So when you came up with your food term, or your term that describes how you think about food, I really hope that no one thought science or confusing or anything like that. And I like to start things off by saying, I think it's safe to say that people make nutrition way more complicated than it needs to be. I want to ease your mind about nutrition here for a second. We need to get back to the basics. We need to look back and understand food as real, whole, clean, the way nature intended us to eat it. My biggest pet peeve is when scientists, or anyone for that matter, obsess about isolating a specific nutrient in food. So for example, if we are eating an apple and there has new research has come out that it has this one component that's anti-inflammatory, and they try to isolate that component, put it into a pill, and say, here you go, here's your antioxidant pill, or here's your anti-inflammatory pill, something like that. I really, really hate that, because it takes people's mind off of eating real food and having a true relationship with the types of food that our body needs. So my take on that is, why not eat the real food and get all the other benefits that that food has to offer? So if we're talking about that apple, it has fiber, it has natural sugar for energy, it has those antioxidants, it has way more than that one specific component that they're trying to isolate and sell you on. And then for me, taste would be included in those benefits. So because nutrition is a scientific field, it's a newly emerging scientific field, we see a lot of new research, we see a lot of conflicting research coming out, and it's really a lot of people jumping on small specific things to grab, the first marketing idea, the first opportunity they can jump on to make profit, unfortunately. So a big part of this is helping you to understand why your past attempts might have not worked. Why, when you decide to do a diet, maybe you saw the results you wanted to initially, but in the end it was just altogether more discouraging than not. So I have this little cartoon on the screen that says, a doctor is talking to a patient, says, you'll lose weight on any strict diet, but it's mostly water weight from crying. So again, the reason that we teach this thought process, this new relationship with food, is because we don't want you to have a relationship with food where you think of being deprived or starved or just all of these limitations and restrictions on you. That's not what eating is about. That's not what food is about. And a lot of people can't see that, and they try to jump on these quick fixes to make these results happen. And for some people, we understand that maybe they are past that point where they are so discouraged that they do need to see immediate results. And there are some decent weight loss programs out there, weight loss supplements out there that can help them do that. But you have to be able to teach long-term lifestyle changes on top of that. Because as soon as you are finished with your diet, and you have to think of a diet, if you're going to start a diet, you have to ask yourself, is this sustainable? Am I going to be able to keep up this restriction, this limit? Am I going to be able to follow this to a T? What if my job gets busier? What if I have kids? Are you going to be able to stick with that long term? And if the answer is no, then you're probably not developing those lifestyle changes that would help you to do that. So again, we're okay if somebody needs to see those immediate results, but there has to be a balance between those immediate results while you're developing a thought process at the same time. And with this, we are giving, at the end of this talk, we are giving you 20 wonderful meal plans that I think everybody is really excited to get. And a lot of what we do, we have people ask us every day, can you just make me a meal plan? I don't care about the education, I don't care about this and this, I just want a meal plan to follow. And that's that same topic I was just discussing, is if I give you a meal plan and tell you to just cook this and eat this for the rest of your life, that's not sustainable. I can't break down your diet, your preferences, and make a full comprehensive meal plan for you to follow. And what happens when you do, like I said, get busy and can't cook and stick with that forever? We have to help you develop continuous self-control, accountability, and responsibility. You can't let someone do the dirty work for you the whole time. And by dirty work, I mean meal planning takes a lot of time. And planning is a big step in the sustainability and long-term process. you have to plan if you're going to have a thought process. That's basically what a thought process is. A lot of people who have the best success, they pick maybe Sunday to sit down and say, all right, what's my grocery list going to be? What is my meal plan going to be? Or just a concept of what you're going to eat throughout the week so that you have a plan, you do have something to stick with, and you're better off. So again, the fad diets can be anything from Weight Watchers to paleo, anything like that. And again, you can see a lot of good results from them, but they're not sustainable. And that's what we're trying to instill in you today, is that sustainable long-term process for success. All right, so to fix the root of the problem, which we're, mindless eating, there are a lot of triggers out there. And just like anything in the world, if you're going to fix it, you have to understand where the problem originates. So on this slide, I'm just going to kind of walk through some of the most common triggers that people are faced with every day. And you may not have even realized that something that's about to pop up on the screen actually does affect you and your food behavior on a daily basis. So we're going to walk through them, but we're going to visit them in the following slides. So accessibility is a big one. Is that food just sitting there waiting for you to eat it? Energy needs. So if you do not have a balanced diet, if you are not staying on top of your energy needs, you may feel fatigued, and that causes you to reach for food, and it may not always be the right choice. Stress. This is a big one that we're going to talk a lot about. Stress really causes us to emotionally eat and listen to all kind of external cues instead of what we actually need physically. The environment. Anything around us. Are we at a party? Are we socializing? Are we in a setting where it is understood that you're supposed to eat? Convenience. It kind of goes along with accessibility. Is that food sitting there waiting for you? Are you going to choose it because it makes more sense for your schedule? Social influence. Again, are you in a setting where you are expected to eat and maybe they don't have the best choices? Fatigue. Boredom is another big one. So again, boredom and entertainment, that's when our mental cues overpower our physical need. So the 3 stages of our thought process are listed out in the skeleton we gave you of the worksheet. And we're going to be building on these throughout this talk. We just went over all the different triggers and cues that can cause a poor relationship with food and lead to mindless eating in so many different senses. And again, we need to recognize what could be causing us to have these behaviors if we're going to fix them. So when you discover something and you recognize it, you're able to understand it. And when you understand it, you're able to kind of tap into what might be causing it, and you have the ability to at least think about changing it, which is a huge step rather than you not even knowing that that was happening. And once you have the ability to think about changing it, you then have the ability to change it. And that's the ultimate result of what our talk is going to be about today. It's a domino effect that simply starts with, if you can recognize the problem, then you're on the road to success. So the 3 stages, the first one is going to be before you eat. And this is just, again, walking you through the thought process we have, and we're going to expand on these. Once you think before you eat, then you're going to eat. So while you were eating, hopefully for all the right reasons that you determined beforehand, and then there's after you eat. So there are separate steps of the thought process for each of these. And we need to remind ourselves, all of this, to summarize before we even get started, we need to remind ourselves that we eat food to nourish our bodies. Eating is an essential thing that we need to survive. We need certain components that we find in food that help us function and live healthfully. Why would you want to choose a food that would offset your process of nourishing yourself and reaching your wellness goals if you have them? I don't put anything, well, that's not, everyone has their moments, but generally speaking, if I'm going to eat a food, I would rather it not harm my body. That's my relationship. And again, a lot of what I'm talking about today is things that I have taken on myself and have become second to nature to me over time. So I want to enjoy the body I have, the life I have, and I want to, with everything I do, I want to increase my longevity, increase my healthfulness, and live the best life I possibly can. So, expanding on the first step, before you eat, do you even need to buy this food to begin with? So why are you buying the food? Ask yourself, we're creatures of habit. Are you picking up that specific food because it's your go-to snack that you usually grab that sits on your desk at work that you mindlessly eat as you're answering emails? Are you grabbing it because it's that easy pop in the microwave dinner you can have every night? Are you grabbing that ice cream because you know you have a midnight ice cream craving and you let yourself fall into it every night? Why are you choosing the food? That is the biggest and first step. If you don't buy the food to begin with, it's not going to be sitting at your house, sitting on your desk, tempting you to eat it. So again, you are recognizing that maybe you have a habit of buying certain foods and you're going to think about ways to not fall into that. And that would be not buying the food to begin with. We hear a lot, and I'll mention this later on in the presentation, but we hear a lot, healthy food is so expensive, I just can't afford to eat healthy food. Well, my argument when people say that is, if you leave the junk food out of your cart at the grocery store, the food that, again, is not going to be benefiting your health, not going to be setting you on the right track for your wellness goals, if you leave that out of your cart, how much money do you have in your budget to then pick the more healthful foods? The next step in before you eat is assess your hunger. Are you truly hungry? And again, there's two ways we can look at this. You have your internal cues and your external cues. Are you somewhere where those external cues are overpowering your internal cues? If you go to a party and there's a buffet table and you feel socially inclined to mingle and eat food and not even check in to see if you're hungry or full, you're probably going to overeat and not for the right reasons. So again, there's a difference between those cues, and we have to recognize that we are entering into a situation where we are going to have triggers, and we need to learn to recognize them again and control them. We're still on before you eat. Why am I eating this food in the first place? So we've already decided that we're going to buy the food because we do need the food. We've already said, okay, I am hungry, so I am going to eat this food. But we haven't said, okay, this particular food that we're about to eat, now that we have decided we are hungry, why am I picking this food? And a lot plays into that. The modern world makes this very difficult for us to answer. What led us to eating that actual food? Is it because that is our comfort food? Is it because that was the convenient food? It's really hard to tell. So the mindfulness plays into this. When we have stress in our world, it causes us to overeat and it causes us to make bad food choices. We're always looking for the next pleasure fix in today's world. We're programmed to basically eat for pleasure. And the reason for that is because, our bodies still work the same way that our ancestors did. We still have those underlying internal cues that tell us when we need to eat. And that's a survival mechanism. So way back when famine and winter coming were the only big stressors that we had to worry about, our bodies were able to adapt and say, okay, this stress is happening. We need to fuel up and get ready to withstand this. Like I said, it's a survival mechanism. Well, in today's world, our bodies don't know the difference between famine and paying bills, or famine and family stress. It doesn't recognize the difference. Your body knows it's undergoing stress, it gets concerned about survival, and those cues kick in. So if I'm stressed, my body tells me, grab maybe the convenient food or grab the comfort food. And we know that usually comfort food is not the best nutrient-dense food that we can grab. So again, there's really nothing we can do about those internal survival mechanisms, but we can learn what might set them off, and we can talk ourselves down from what could be happening. It really is a war zone out there in terms of stress. We have a daily battle with so many different things, and one of those would be the environmental cues. And we mentioned environment being one of the biggest triggers earlier. So we have to be able to recognize, okay, that's an advertisement that's trying to catch my attention. That is a marketing scam that's trying to catch my attention, trying to get me to buy this, to pay for it. We have to learn how to steer around those external cues. And again, the external cues can be stress, like I mentioned, that we really can't avoid because that's just how we're programmed. Or they can be people trying to tap into those cues and say, you really need this because of this and this. And that can be overpowering, overwhelming, and most of the time we fall into them. So making sure that you attend a grocery store tour, get some grocery store education so that you're able to recognize what an advertisement is based off of what you actually need, what to avoid so that you do not get sidetracked from your grocery list. And then on top of that, I'm amazed every day when I look into consumer research. There are companies out there who track your every move, who track your habits, and then they market towards those habits. And again, part of that thought process, part of the mindfulness is being able to recognize when that is happening. All right, so we're still in before you eat. This is a long section, but we need to ask ourselves, again, is this going to nourish me? Is it going to nourish me, or am I going to get discouraged after I eat this? So eating is emotional on a lot of different levels. We eat because we're emotional, and then after we eat, if we have a general understanding of what our goals are and what we need to do to reach those goals, we probably get really upset with ourselves when we fall off the wagon. So recognizing, is this the right food I need to eat? Is it going to benefit me? Is it going to help me reach my goals, or is it going to cause my progress to backtrack? You know where you want to be. You just have to step back and ask yourself those same questions. And then lastly, for the before you eat section is my favorite. And this is kind of, when you have thought through all the other questions and really checked in with everything, now you are sitting down to eat and you ask yourself, how can I make this meal or this food as beneficial as possible? And the reason we want to do this, again, is we want to do everything in our power to reach our wellness goals, to be as healthy as we can. And that comes in the form of, making the food the best it can be. Maybe you need to add an extra food group to your plate to get some more variety. We get something different from every food group. And if we are restricting food groups or eating more of one over the other, we're not going to be getting the balance we need and everything we need from what food can give us. And again, this is where the healthy food is too expensive concept comes into play. If you leave the junk out of your cart, you are able to make more room in your budget for the healthy stuff. So when we look back on how I dealt with the patient I talked about at the beginning, again, I didn't take anything away from him. I never said, you can't have this, don't eat that. It was an addition. So I would say we really need to include this. You figure out for yourself in your budget what you can take out based on what you know can benefit you or harm you, and let's add this in. Let's make this portion on your plate bigger, let's say the vegetable portion, which would cause you to have to make that red meat protein section a little bit smaller. So again, it's not taking away, it's just adding or changing the size of something. So before you sit down, ask yourself, what can I do to this plate to make it even better? And again, there's a whole lot of nutrition education that plays into this. And basically right now we're covering the outline of what the thought process to get you started would be. And remember that when you're in the store and you're trying to choose foods that are nutritionally adequate for you and are going to benefit you, it tends to be the better quality foods, which tend to be a little bit more expensive. And I read something the other day that said the less expensive it is in the store, the less nutrients it has to offer us. And that usually comes from all of the different production shortcuts and things like that that really steal the nutrition out of our food. So when we're focusing on the real food, the clean food, the whole food, that's going to give you the most nutrition for your buck. And then again, understanding that it's a domino effect. When you save money on not buying foods that are going to harm you and replacing them with foods that are going to benefit you, there's a whole line of benefits that come from that. You're going to feel better, you're going to have more productivity at work, you're going to decrease your sick days, decrease your healthcare dollars spent. I mean, it is just, it's worth the extra money that people associate healthy food with. All right, so now we're moving into the next section, which is while you eat. The best part, right? All right, so the biggest thing here is now that we've sat down, we've made sure that our meal is the best it can be, let's check in with our portions. And the best way that I can describe this is portions have to be individualized. So when I tell somebody, you need to cut this down to 4 ounces, they tend to get pretty resistant and resilient, and a lot of people don't believe in portion sizes. And the way that I have combated that, especially with the patient I told you about, is to use the palm of your hand as a model. This makes it individualized to you. So if I am dealing with a 6'5", 350-pound football player, and I say, eat the size of your palm, I can then look at my palm and say, yeah, that would be a lot more food than I myself would need. So it individualizes it to you and makes it make more sense. And basically, we have recommended portion sizes for a reason, and we're going to go over those in the next slide, but it's for a reason. It's the amount we need to eat, and they're put into play in a very specific way, but we can make them more individualized by using our own palm of our hand, is what I tend to tell people. All right, so am I going to stop when I'm satisfied, or am I going to stop when I'm stuffed? We all know that being stuffed is very uncomfortable. That is my least favorite feeling. But while it's happening, you don't really realize it. And that, the whole eating slowly and letting your body, your internal cues kick in plays into that. We want to slow down and take the time to listen to those internal cues, which for a lot of people need to be recalibrated. And we'll talk about that. But you can imagine yourselves like a car that has a fuel tank. If we're at that point now where we know we're eating for the right reasons, we know for the most part that we're eating all of the right things. Now, how much do we actually need? And that's where those internal cues are there to help us. And when I say internal cues, I'm talking about the communication system happening within you that is between your brain and your stomach, telling you when it's full, when it doesn't need any more energy. When we take in unnecessary calories, it's because we have just completely disregarded those internal cues and we continue to eat. And those continue to build up in storage. So oversized portions are a big part of this. And like I said, portions and serving sizes are put into play because that's what our body can efficiently process in one sitting. So again, yes, some people are larger than others. Some people have different activity levels, and if they need a little bit bigger of a portion, that makes sense. That's again why I said individualizing it is important. When we eat certain foods, those foods are made up of different macronutrients, different components. You have your fat, your protein, and your carbohydrates. Fat tends to have more calories. So if we're eating something that is very fatty, the portion size is going to be smaller because we don't need as much of it to fill our energy needs. If we're overeating portions, we're just adding extra calories. And then when when we take that a step further and we say we just continuously eat, if you're a continuous snacker, if you don't really eat big meals but you just snack throughout the entire day, you're piling energy on top of energy. So basically, when you eat food, your body tells you, okay, I am done, I'm full, this is the amount that I can now efficiently use to fuel myself, to burn in that perfect balance to where we're not gaining weight. If we continue to eat when we're not hungry, our body doesn't have the option to burn the fuel we already have, and so that's going to store it, and that's how we store fat. And then we never give our body the opportunity to tap into what we've already stored to use. So people generally, like I said, disregard those internal cues, and they can become exhausted over time. You know, everyone is different. I want to make that point very clear. There are people out there, depending on their activity level, on their genetics, on anything, that can, you know, require different amounts of food and in different frequencies. So there are people out there with fast metabolisms who do need to eat a few snacks throughout the day, and it's generally because their internal cues are telling them to. And then you have the opposite of people who eat throughout the day just because they're bored or looking for that next fix, like we talked about. So it's important to understand those cues. And a perfect example of someone who might need to recalibrate their internal cues would be someone who skips breakfast in the morning. So, I mean, it could be for any reason. Maybe they think skipping meals is the key to weight loss, but they need to understand that if we skip a meal, especially early in the morning, that is going to dictate our food behaviors for the rest of the day. So we're not going to have that fuel in the beginning. So our body is going to tell us to make up for it during the next few meals. And that's when we tend to overeat. And then again, it's that downward spiral where we're just building calories on top of calories. Portions are important, like I said. We don't necessarily want you to be a portion police. That does take some of the fun out of eating, and it can be kind of discouraging. I see people who weigh their food before they eat it, and it, like I said, takes a lot of the fun out. So you will develop the ability to eyeball portions. And again, like I said, the palm of your hand, you always have that tool with you. Everywhere you go, whether it's at a restaurant, whether you're sitting down at your home to eat, you can check yourself by just holding your hand over your plate and saying, maybe I should take a spoonful or two off my plate because this is a little bit too big. Smaller portions also make room for more variety. So like I said, if we are decreasing the size of one of the unhealthier portions, you can add more from a healthy food group. And altogether, that makes your eating experience more varied. You're getting more nutritional benefit, more color on your plate, more different things for your taste buds to experience. All right, and then still thinking about overeating, you know, cravings are the biggest thing that, or the cravings are the hardest thing that people have to overcome. And it's for a wide variety of reasons. And I do want to spend a minute here talking about cravings, because when you're talking about your thought process, you know, after this talk, you now have all these tools to say, do I need to eat that? Should I eat that? What should I eat? But then that craving kicks in and you almost disregard everything. It's that addiction factor. And cravings can be a result of those external cues. You have adapted to a certain way of eating. You know, when you're around a certain group of people, or maybe you sit down for your TV show and you always have your popcorn or your ice cream, that's when those cravings kick in. Again, we're creatures of habit. When we think about a habit, we then crave what usually accompanies what we're doing. They can also be a sign of imbalance in the diet. So again, if we don't have a balanced diet, if we are always eating those foods that tend to digest really quickly, like carbohydrates, our body then says, okay, I'm hungry again, I'm not satisfied, I didn't get all of the food groups and all of the nutrients that I need. So it tells us we're hungry, but it doesn't necessarily tell us what we need. So us, you know, being creatures of habit, having that stress influence, we go back and we grab the comfort food again, we grab what we're craving. And then it's that downward spiral of overeating all over again. And like I said, the internal communication system can be exhausted over time if we continue to ignore it. We just lose that awareness, we lose the concept of listening to it, and it can be recalibrated, and that's what this whole talk is about. If you walk through these steps over and over, you're going to become more in tune to what your body actually needs, not what your mind thinks you need. We're not taking the only eat this and never eat that approach. That never works, and in my opinion, from past experiences, that actually induces cravings more. So if you tell yourself, I'm cutting this out, I'm no longer going to eat that, I'm not allowed to eat that, that leaves room to say, but I really want that. And those cravings, it's an easy way to relapse. The higher the nutritional value of food, the more satisfied we're going to be, like I mentioned a second ago. If you're eating that balanced meal, if you have looked at your plate and said, how can I make this even better, and that's what you did, your body is going to be more satisfied and it's less likely to crave things and send you on that downward spiral. And it's important to remember that food can be very controlling. Like I said, it is an addictive behavior. It can be. I've seen it plenty of times. And this is not an overnight process. This thought process development has to happen over time. I've seen plenty of people walk through these steps, have these good practices for a few months, and then it starts to become second nature. And they're able to maybe reserve this step process for when they know they're about to have a weaker moment. If it's the holidays, they know they're about to go to that party with the food buffet, they can pull out their tracking tool and say, I need to ask myself these questions. I need to make sure I'm on track and not mindlessly eat. So it does become second nature, and that's the whole point of this. That's the key to success. All right. So again, with it not being an overnight process, think of it as a relationship. With any relationship you have in life, human relationships, it doesn't happen overnight. You have to taper into it. You have to respect that things are going to push and give, and you can't just dive into it right away, or it will scare the other person away, right? So we don't want to do that with ourselves. So recalibrating comes down to balance and mindfulness, like we've been saying over and over again. And it's a process that's going to be under construction for a while. We have to eat with balance and variety. Keeping those things in mind, like I said, are going to help lead to satisfaction, decrease those cravings, and altogether make you healthier, because those are the types of foods, the types of nutrients that you need. We have to think. If I could pick one word to summarize this entire talk, it would be think. We have to listen to the internal cues. And again, that's not going to happen overnight. It takes a recalibrating process, and that is exactly what this thought process regimen is designed to help you do. We have to know who and what information to trust. So again, thinking about those environmental and external cues and all the people who care more about profit than they do about our health, we cannot let them get in our head. We have to stay true to what we know about ourselves, what we know about our internal cues and our health status. Learn to make the food count. So again, look at your plate and ask, how can I make this food even better? How can it give me the nutrition I need to reach the goals I want to reach? Take control. That's what this whole talk is about. Food is controlling. Food has a funny way of luring us in. It takes over our mind. We can think one way and act a completely different way, as with any addictive substance. That's what they do. So if we take control and then we say, I see you sitting over there on my desk, in the fridge, whatever it may be, but I'm going to walk through these steps and ask myself if I really need this, if this is really going to benefit me, that's taking control. Learn how to eat the right amount to burn energy and not to store. So again, watching those portion sizes, watching the timing of your meals. Did you have enough time to burn off all the energy you took in the last meal? Are you actually hungry again? Or are you just eating because you think you're supposed to? And then planning ahead is another huge part. It's the dirty work of it, but it really is the underlying key to success with this whole process. All right. After, again, while you're eating, one of the easier things to do, I think, is to appreciate the food you're eating. And that's where a lot of people lose their relationship with food, is they're eating it because it's convenient. They're eating it because they think they're supposed to, and they're just kind of getting through it. Well, are you appreciating it? Are you taking time to realize that that food actually came from somewhere, hopefully a decent source, and people spend their lives making this food available to you? Animals die to make this food available for you. Are you thinking about that while you're eating? Put an emphasis on mealtime. Share it with friends and family, because food is supposed to be enjoyed. It's not supposed to be that restrictive thing that people assume diets are. And now we're in the after we eat phase, which there's only a few things here, because now the damage is done, right? or the good is or the good has happened. So how do you feel after you eat? Are you proud that you just ate that food that you know is going to nourish you and help you reach your goals, or do you feel guilty and discouraged? And this, like I said, food is emotional. We eat it for a reason, and then we feel a certain way after we eat it. And I can tell you from experience, the more you eat the things that make you proud and happy that you ate them, the more likely you are to continue on the right track. All right, and now we have reached the finish line. Everything is done, and we're going to, at least for the first little while, record and track what we have done. So diet journals really help people with the thought process, you know, in more ways than one. I have a lot of people do these when they are searching for nutrition education because it makes you stop and think. Maybe it's before you eat something and you say, oh gosh, I'm going to have to write this in my journal. The person who's educating me is going to have to see that I made this choice. But it can also be for your own accountability. You know, you look back and say, I made this choice, and now I'm going to write down how I felt. And then you can look back and know what you want to repeat, your proud moments, and what guilty moments you want to decrease. So that's all I have for you. Just again, that was all about how we treat food and how we let food treat us. And it's the thought process of the matter. And that thought process is very, very important. It dictates our food behaviors in every way, from what we choose to when we choose it. I mean, it's a domino effect. But it is important to understand that that is just one piece of the puzzle. And Laura is now going to come on and talk about the steps you could take afterwards to keep up that great
plan.
That great plan.
All right. Thank you so much, Chloe. That was excellent. That was so good. That information is just so helpful and what we all really, really need to hear and understand. And yes, so now we understand these changes will not happen overnight. It's only a part of the puzzle. And Chloe mentioned that meal planning is like the dirty work, and that's what I have discovered. This is the work that none of us really want to do, and I don't. I will admit, it's not that I look forward to, oh my gosh, tomorrow's Saturday, that's my day, I'm going to plan my meals, I'm going to get my grocery list together, I'm going to go to the grocery store. We don't like to do that, but we do it. Okay, so planning is a huge step. Meal planning takes time and also thought. So I want to help people with that part of it and that part of the puzzle. That is why I'm here. And I want to help take meal planning to the next level for you and make sure that it's happening for you, because some of these other things, this relationship with food, if you don't have that healthier food and options around, that also can make that whole thought process get harder to follow through with. So I've created an 8-week program, and I'm going to kind of talk about my Nutrition Fit and 8-week program. And this is what I've worked on and realized in helping people is kind of identifying 8 challenges that we need to have in our lives and we need to focus on to help us establish that healthy lifestyle. So my goal is by the end of the 8 weeks, you'll have knowledge, that nutrition knowledge behind what you're choosing to have on your plate, and tools and practice. After 8 weeks, you'll have a lot of good practice of creating that nutritionally fit lifestyle, as I like to call it. So I just want to kind of break it down and talk about what this program involves. It's 8 weeks of live video consults with me, your personal dietitian. We meet every week and talk at least up to 30 minutes. We'll talk about your progress, your goals, your struggles, and what we can do to help. Each week I'm going to introduce a new topic and new information to help you with those decisions you're making. We'll talk about all these different topics that you see in front of us. Fruits and vegetables, carbohydrates, meal timing, protein, water. That's what you would think of, right, for a dietitian. But I also need to hit a little bit on cardio, fitness, strength training. Does that calorie in, calorie out, and we will talk about that and how that can help your relationship with food. So with the meal planning, also unlimited communication on an online platform. So the diet journaling that we were talking about is very important. And so I will provide tools for you through an online platform where you can track your meals, you can track your exercise, you can track your fluid, and we can direct message each other anytime in between our 8 sessions as we're going along. I will be there for you. Now, in addition, at the very beginning of the 8-week program, I am going to provide you with a personalized meal plan. We'll talk about calories needed, broken down into servings from the different food groups based on your weight goals. Now, this, again, is not something that I feel like you will necessarily follow day to day, day in and day out, but it at least gives you that reference point of understanding what a healthy, balanced meal plan for you might look like. I will also provide you with my meal planning guide. Basically, this is a system that I have used to raise when I was working full-time and raising 2 boys, and able to meal plan and go to the grocery store once a week. A lot of people think that it takes all this time, and I hate going to the grocery store, but I had to make it efficient. And so what I'm doing is sharing my meal planning strategy with you. And you can take it, and there are some new tools out there these days. There's a lot of great new technology and great resources to help you establish a meal plan system that works for you. And that's what I want to help you with as well as part of this program. So I want to thank you for joining our program, and encourage you to consider my Nutritionally Fit an 8-week program. I will be sending you an email after the event finishes here, and talk about the program in 8 weeks. And I'd like to encourage you to follow us, following Chloe. She is on Facebook. She has a Facebook page with Curative Nutrition, and she's also on Instagram as well. Me on Dietitian in Your Kitchen. I have a website, Facebook. I'm on Instagram as well as Twitter. You can follow me on Laura Poland RD. So I hope you've enjoyed this. What I'm going to do now, though, is take a few moments, and I'm going to have to take the screen away here. We'll check in and see if there's any questions out there. So, not seeing any questions coming in. Feel free to ask some questions. We'll stay here for a little while, and thank you so much for joining us tonight, and great job, Chloe. I'm sure you've all learned a little something, and hopefully can take that to the next level. So, and yes, feel free, if you were trying to get a question to us and we are not seeing it here, would you please feel free to email me. I am Laura, Laura, at Dietitian in Your Kitchen, and that's DIETITIAN inyourkitchen.com. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.